Drag racing looked through the eyes of its founding father. And is stock eliminator racing in Texas becoming a family affair? From Washington, D.C., those questions and more will be answered on this edition of NHRA Today. The blossoms are in bloom in our nation's capital, welcoming spring and all the visitors the season heralds. Among those, some of the ruling party of NHRA championship drag racing. Here in the shadow of the Washington Monument is the National Treasure Chest, the Smithsonian Institution, a museum filled with priceless mementos of the American way of life. And the most recent addition to this collection is the funny car reigning Winston champion Bruce Larson drove to victory in 1989. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Evans, and welcome to the premiere edition of NHRA Today, TNN's video magazine of championship drag racing. Today, we'll bring you all the pomp and ceremony from the Smithsonian, plus we'll explore some other developments on the quarter-mile scene. We'll bring you up to date on the results of the first 4 events on the Winston National Championship Tour. Don Garlitz will have a look at how clutch advancements have helped lower lapse times. We'll highlight sportsman action from Division 4, and we'll introduce you to the Emmons Gang, a family of Texas desperados whose sheer number and speed dominate stock classes in the Lone Star State. But first, the most important event of this new season has to be the induction of Bruce Larson's Olds funny car into the Smithsonian Archives. And Dave McClellan was there to witness the historic ceremonies. Dave?
Steve, some of the most prestigious names in auto racing have their cars on display here at the Smithsonian, like the Indy car of Mario Andretti or the NASCAR stock car of Richard Petty, and of course, Big Daddy Don Garlitz. Joining that who's who of motorsports is Bruce Larson.
Just a few years ago, it just would have been unthinkable that this could happen to the sport of drag racing or to me. So we're just proud to be one of the early donors of drag racing equipment into the Smithsonian, and we hope there will be a lot more to come.
The ceremony, which was graciously paid for by Datcon Instruments, Kendall Oil, and Key Auto Parts, provided an opportunity for Bruce Larson's friends and fellow racers to share the historic moment. Although the funny car has only been on display for one day, it has already become a popular attraction.
The museum was only open for 2 or 3 hours after the thing was brought in today. People were standing around it and saying, God, what a great-looking machine. I think racing is important in the history of technology in the 20th century. I think drag racing is especially important because it, more than almost any other kind of racing, is an American sport. And this is the National Museum of American History. So we ought to make something out of it.
The induction of Bruce Larson's funny car into the Smithsonian collection is proof positive of drag racing's importance to American culture. And it's really appropriate that the honor goes to a man whose racing career took off at the wheel of a car known as USA 1. The name Bruce Larson is synonymous with funny cars, and his involvement in the class dates back to 1966 when he debuted the first all-fiberglass flopper.
Every panel was copied in fiberglass. The doors opened, the trunk opened, the hood opened, and so not too many people realized that the rest of the body, the roof, and everything were fiberglass.
For the next 6 years, Larson toured the country, facing such legends as Jungle Jim Lieberman and Dino Don Nicholson in exhibition match races.
We really had a good old time. We'd go race 3 runs for $800, $900. We were making money, and we had a good time traveling and low pressure.
After experiencing a bad fire in 1973, Larson briefly defected to the pro stock ranks.
I looked around and somebody else was having a good time in drag racing. It was Bill Jenkins and his clan of pro stock cars, and we built a Vega Pro Stocker, and we ran part of 1974 with that. And it ran all right, but it just doesn't give you the thrill that a funny car gives you.
Upon his return to funny cars, Larson was once again a match race marvel, but he had to wait more than a decade before capturing his first NHRA funny car Oscar at the 1988 Cajun Nationals. From that race on, there was no looking back. The '89 season started with a Winternationals win and a points lead that he would never relinquish. Along the way, Larson set an NHRA season record of 11 final round appearances as he captured that elusive first Winston championship. Bruce, I can't think of a more proper place for a couple of old drag racers like us than the Smithsonian Institution, right?
I can't now, but back in my high school days when I got interested in cars, I never dreamed that it could come to a thing like this.
Well, a couple of 3 years ago, you were wondering if there was enough match race money out there to even continue in the sport, and look where we are.
It's just beautiful. Drag racing's come a long way, hasn't it?
Tell me about the few days you've spent in the nation's capital.
Well, the real cap off last night was our trip to the White House. And the way it happened is we found that there are some racing enthusiasts within the White House gates. So last night, we had a guided tour with an off-duty security man and 2 drag racers that work in the White House. It was fantastic. We spent hours in places that not a lot of people get to, and it was beautiful.
Congratulations on this honor.
Thank you.
Dave?
Steve, while you and Bruce were taking that stroll down memory lane, I had an idea come to me right out of the blue. For you viewers at home, if you want to keep up to date with what's going on with NHRA Championship drag racing, well, dial the NHRA hotline. That's 1-900-468-NHRA. We'll bring you up to date each week with what's going on the national event scene. NHRA Today is being brought to you by Firestone, makers of Firehawk performance tires for the street, the track, and the strip. Tires that meet the test.
We here at NHRA Today are just beginning our season, but the racers, well, they already have 4 events under their belts. And the tour began with a trek out west. I mean, not in Conestoga wagons, but in their giant semi-tractor trailer rigs. Dave McClelland has this report on the national drag racing scene.
Steve, whenever the NHRA comes to town, close racing is guaranteed, especially in the highly competitive pro stock class. This 20-event season began in Southern California at the Winternationals, where Jerry Ekman in the near lane took a razor-thin final round victory over Bruce Allen. 1 week later at the Arizona Nationals, fastest qualifier Bob Glidden captured his 77th career Oscar with a win over an on-form Gordy Rivera. At the Super Nationals at Houston Raceway Park, Mark Powick set a new national record with a 7.22-second qualifying run. But Powick's happiness was short-lived as he lost in the first round. Veterans Warren Johnson and Bruce Allen paired off in the finals, with Johnson, the man they call the Professor, powering past in the far lane for the victory. At the most recent event, the Gatornationals, 2 new faces showed up in the final round, with Kenny Delco out-dueling Ricky Smith for the win. The across-the-board competitiveness of the entire pro stock field comes as no surprise to 10-time and defending champion Bob Glidden.
In pro stock, I don't know that there are favorites. Maybe at certain racetracks, certain cars get their combinations worked out a little better than others.
In the funny car ranks, the early national events took preseason forecasts and threw them right out the proverbial window. Former alcohol funny car racer K.C. Hollywood Spurlock stunned the field at the Winter Nationals by knocking off a string of favorites on his way to victory. In Arizona, West Coast veteran Dale Boldy backpedaled his recalcitrant racer past a parts-breaking Bruce Larson to take the title. Boldy reached the finals by defeating John Force in the semis, but at the next race, the Super Nationals, Force was unstoppable. Qualifying fastest, Force and his Austin Coyle-prepared machine dominated the event. Like Force, veteran Ed McCulloch made it to the semifinals in 3 of the first 4 events, but it wasn't until the Gatornationals that the ace was dealt a winning hand. His final round victory over Spurlock helped close the gap on points leader Larson.
It's early in the year, but we got to have those points, and every round counts. I mean, you lose a round now, the end of the year, who knows, it could be the one.
4-second runs are now almost common occurrences in the top fuel category. So far this year, 9 drivers have notched sub-5-second performances. Among this elite group is a recent newcomer to the 4-second club, Lori Johns, who started 1990 with a surprising victory over Dick LaHaye at the Winter Nationals. The following week in Phoenix, the 1988 Winston champion Joe Amato in the near lane powered to victory over 1989 champ Gary Ormsby. Earlier, in his semifinal round, Ormsby had a front row seat for what has joined the 4-second club as the top fuel trend of the year, the wheel stand. When the front of Shirley Muldowney's racer became airborne, the car crossed the center line, and only superb reactions by both drivers avoided an incident. Such auto acrobatics are on the rise. Jimmy Nix, fastest qualifier in Arizona with a 4-second blast, went to the next event, the Supernationals, with high hopes. But his fueler soared even higher in a qualifying wheel stand pirouette. Wheels in the air driving may well have cost Darrell Gwynn a chance for victory in Houston. Fresh off a national record 4.90 in qualifying, Gwynn lifted the front end in a first-round loss to Frank Bradley. Stepping in to dominate the Houston proceedings was Dick LaHaye, who found the elusive clutch combination to take him to victory. 2 weeks later, a record Gatornationals crowd saw the gold-colored cars of Gwynn and LaHaye meet in the semifinals, with the Floridian taking the win in the near lane. Gwynn then disposed of Eddie Hill to capture his second straight Gatornationals title and leap from 6th to 2nd in the Winston point standings.
I'll tell you, that's exactly what the doctor ordered. Invaluable Winston points. I'll tell you, got off to a slow start, but hopefully we can gain up some points here in the next couple races.
Record-setting performances such as Darrell Gwynn's are due in part to some dramatic advances in clutch technology. Here to tell us more about the modern lock-up clutch is the man whose name is synonymous with drag racing, Big Daddy Don Garlitz. Don?
Well, Dave, looks like you and Steve are having a great time in Washington for the induction of Bruce Larson's funny car into the Smithsonian. I remember how exciting it was for me in 1987 when they inducted Swamp Rat 30. And it's really hard to believe that funny cars today are running as fast as Swamp Rat 30 was in 1987. And part of that performance is due to clutch technology. They take a pneumatic or hydraulic piston, they hold the throwout bearing against the arms, releasing it very slowly through the use of timers so that it is timed out to get the total clutch pack locked up by the end of the drag strip. So that's how you get the power to the ground on these 4,000 horsepower nitro fuel engines.
Don, you can rest assured that Swamp Rat 30 is in good hands here at the Smithsonian, where it's the centerpiece of the Material World exhibit. And now we have with us the man who for so many years has guided the sport of drag racing to its current prominence, Wally Parks. And Wally, we are so happy to have you with us on our premiere show.
Well, it's a big thing for us. This is one of the best things I think that has happened in a long time, because all the years that we've struggled with hot rodding and drag racing to gain this kind of recognition, it's all come true and it's wonderful.
And this is the Museum of American History.
Well, it is, and I think it's also the Museum of the History of the Automobile, because the surroundings here show how it started in the first. And as you know, our sport has been based on what you can do with cars, things other than go fast, and what's on display here shows the results of that ingenuity.
And so wonderful that the Smithsonian people wanted yet another drag car.
Well, I think it's one of the highest honors that we could ever expect. I think an awful lot of it has to go along with the progress that's been made by the sport in the last few years, but we're honored and we're delighted.
Thank you. The Smithsonian Institution is one of Washington's top tourist attractions, pulling in people from all over the United States. And you know, there's a certain kind of grassroots appeal to the museum, well, much like the sport of drag racing. And it's that aspect of the NHRA that the next member of our staff will bring you on a weekly basis. Bob Fry will report on all the stories among the thousands upon thousands of sportsman drag racers. Bob?
Thanks a lot, Steve, and it looks like things are going pretty well up at the Smithsonian. There's no sportsman cars there yet, but through the facilities of the Nashville Network, we're going to take a look at some of the best sportsman racing action from around the country this year.
Division 4 racers arrived at Baton Rouge last week to find beautiful weather and a tricky track surface, as funny car points leader Pat Austin discovered in the finals against Texan Hugh Kelly. Austin's tire-shaking dance along the center line left both drivers unsure of the outcome.
I didn't know if I won or not because I was afraid I'd cross the center line, but you can't tell till it's over, you know, and they come down there and told me we won, so that's all that matters.
We should have won. Just he got me in the lights, and that's the way it went down.
A pair of Johnsons found the right combination in the other classes. The Olds-powered machine of Blaine Johnson won Alcohol Dragster, and in a stock Ford versus Chevy duel, Terry Johnson turned a whole shot into a win over current points leader Grant Lewis. But the most surprised driver of the day has to be Superstock winner Monty Campbell.
I saw that the other car had red lighted, and when that happened, I just went blank.
Here are other winners from Baton Rouge. Division 4 has given rise to many racing champions, but one Texas family can almost lay claim to the stock class as family property. When the Emmons family arrives for a race, they make quite an entrance. The clan consists of one father, 4 sons, 8 cars, and one mother trying to keep them all straight.
I never thought it would get to be consistent like it is. The big, well, I just never thought it would grow this big.
It all started with this man, Harvey Emmons Jr. Harvey and his wife Martha have been coming to East X Dragway in Houston since 1963. Today, Harvey and his family operate the track as well as race there. Oldest son, Harvey III, virtually grew up in the shade of a starting line Christmas tree. And the family's love of racing is shared by brothers Terry, Gary, and Jerry. If you're wondering why their names rhyme, you guessed it, they're triplets.
Our family deal is he wanted a little brother to play with, but he got 3, you know, so we had to stop right there.
While the Emmons family might have stopped growing then, their interest in drag racing has always been on the rise.
All 3 of us were just anxious to our 16th birthday, and we was ready to roll. Except, we start at 15 when you get your driver's permit.
Harvey III, known as Speedy, was the first Emmons to win a national event, a feat duplicated by brother Jerry at this year's Supernationals. With all 5 Emmonses racing in stock or super stock, they're bound to compete against each other quite often. The most memorable time was at the Cajuns in 1988 when Speedy outran little brother Gary to take the title for the 2nd time.
When they both was winning run-up, I mean, I had tears in my eyes because I loved it, you know, because it keeps the family together. I mean, that don't happen every day.
With the endless support of their mother and father, the Emmons boys have big plans for the future. Harvey and Speedy each have their own used car lots. As for the triplets,
I prefer really to go on to college and be a psychologist. I'd rather go to college and probably, inquire about the chiropractic field, something, makes money, of course, to support my racing habit. To be a successful car dealer and to come out here and be world champion one of these years.
Their enthusiasm for the sport is obvious, but with all the time they spend racing, do the boys feel they've missed anything?
Drag racing is just it for us. I mean, we don't play basketball, football, hockey, anything like that. I mean, it's just drag racing on Sundays, and, whenever we can get drag racing, we can get it.
This takes care of it all.
Does it. It don't get any better than this.
Castrol presents the GTX Pipeline, the latest news from the world of drag racing.
There's good news for a popular West Coast nitro racer. Seems that pro baseball player Jack Clark has announced that he will field a Top Fuel dragster team in 1991 with Tom McEwen as the driver. Tom has been busy on the exhibition circuit with his supercharged 57 Chevy, and he says the deal came about with the help of a friend.
Dale Armstrong brought him over and introduced him to me at the shop about a year ago. And I don't follow baseball that much. I just know that he's a big shot baseball player, and he wanted to build a Top Fuel dragster, and I tried to talk him out of it, and I thought I had him talked out of it, and he left. And then about 3 weeks ago, he came back, said, "Hey, I'm really serious. What would it take to get you interested?" And I said, "Well, it's going to cost a lot of money." And he says, "I'm the sponsor, and let's get the best of everything, and we'll build it and test in November and December and debut at the Winternationals in '91 at Pomona." And so we've already bought a truck and a trailer and a race car, and we're going to hire a complete crew, and it's going to be an all-out attempt.
Today's high compression engine.
Dave, it's appropriate that we end this first of many NHRA Today programs with the giant pendulum. Time is the essence of drag racing.
And certainly, Steve, time has been at the root of today's program. From the look at the evolution and sophistication of drag racing with Wally Parks to the historic honor accorded Bruce Larson. But right now, let's take a look to the future. In coming months here on NHRA Today, we're going to be visiting every Winston Championship Trail site, and we'll be bringing you reports from Canada to California and all points in between.
We'll take you behind the scenes to meet the people who make up this extraordinary sport. You'll meet both professional and sportsman racers, and we'll find out what really makes them tick. And we'll constantly keep you up to date on late-breaking news stories of interest to drag racers and fans alike.
Steve, it sounds like a great season on NHRA Today. Why don't you tell them what's coming up next week?
Well, we'll take you along to see what happens when Top Fuel meets Top Gun. You'll see the care that goes into making a modern race car a work of art. And we'll introduce you to some very special racing fans. I'm Steve Evans for Dave McClelland and Don Garlitz and Bob Fry, thanking you for joining us on NHRA Today. See you next week.
NHRA Today has been brought to you by Castrol GTX, engineered for today's smaller cars.